To Israel now, where Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is due to take the witness stand shortly for his first appearance in his corruption trial. Ahead of today's proceedings, demonstrators protested outside the Tel Aviv court where the trial is taking place. Netanyahu arrived to a packed courtroom where he is facing charges of fraud, breach of trust and accepting bribes. His testimony will mark the first time a sitting Israeli Prime Minister takes the stand as a criminal defendant.
Benjamin Netanyahu takes great care to portray himself as the wartime leader Israel needs. But criminal accusations against him are mounting and could threaten his grip on power. Israel's Prime Minister, now officially wanted by the International Criminal Court for alleged war crimes, also faces trial at home. For over 4 years, he's been accused of committing fraud, bribery and breach of trust in 3 separate cases. Case 1000 claims Netanyahu and his family accepted lavish gifts from rich businessmen in exchange for political favours. Case 2000 alleges that he discussed curbing the distribution of a rival newspaper in return for favourable news coverage in one of Israel's biggest papers. Case 4000 accuses Netanyahu of intervening in government regulations that benefited an Israeli communications giant in exchange for positive media coverage. If convicted, he could face prison time, though it's unclear for how long. Over the years, the trial was postponed several times, sometimes at the request of Netanyahu himself, but also due to the coronavirus pandemic. In all 3 cases, Netanyahu denies any wrongdoing. While he admits he did receive gifts, he says no favours were given in exchange. He insists the charges are politically motivated.
He sees himself as the savior of Israel, the one who fights there the best than any other leader in Israel and perhaps than any other leader in the world. Being charged or being convicted will taint his legacy.
And his critics have accused him of prolonging the war in Gaza on purpose to delay judgment and remain in power.
Our Prime Minister's only concern is his own survival. He wants to stay in power.
At the same time, Netanyahu has been able to use the trial to score points with his supporters.
It serves his political constituency, said, you see, I'm being hunted by all kinds of negative enemies, even the judicial system, that they find all kinds of false accusations.
Netanyahu's legal team applied to delay this hearing too. They say the Prime Minister didn't have enough time to prepare his defence because he is too busy with the war.
Well, let's cross to Jerusalem, where DW correspondent Emily Gordine is standing by. Emily, if ever convicted, can Netanyahu actually stay in office?
Well, if Netanyahu is convicted, he will likely appeal to the Supreme Court in Israel. And while the Supreme Court makes its decisions, so in the meantime, yes, he is allowed to stay in office. There is a small loophole here, however, and that is if the court initially rules that his conviction carries with it so-called with disgrace, then that means they do not have to wait until the final verdict from the Supreme Court and the Knesset can actually remove him from power. However, that would require a majority in the Knesset, in Israel's parliament, and that as such on this topic is not a given.
Now, Emily, this is the first time that an incumbent Prime Minister has stood trial in Israel. How is the country reacting? What are ordinary Israelis saying?
Well, no matter who you speak to, really nobody is particularly happy about this at all. This trial will carry on for weeks. It will be a public spectacle, really, with Netanyahu having to appear in court at least 3 times a week, and that while he faces an international arrest warrant, but also while Israel continues to be engaged in the war in Gaza. So it comes really at the worst timing, many think, but the trial itself also deepens the divisions in Israel. So depending on who you speak to, when you ask them, how do you feel about this trial? And when they tell you they're unhappy, they will respond also with different reasons for why they're unhappy. Netanyahu supporters will tell you that this is a witch hunt led by left liberals in Israel, by the judiciary, to topple Netanyahu. This is a narrative he himself has been fostering throughout the years, and which has also been adopted by many of his cabinet ministers, who some of them appeared in court this morning in his support. But his critics have accused him of extending this trial in specific, but also the war in Gaza, to remain in power. So you see here how this trial in and of itself deepens the divisions, even though I think everyone in Israel is pretty unhappy about the fact that it exists at all.
Emily Gordine there reporting from Jerusalem.